G'day everyone, and welcome back to another live stream for the Aussie Investing Machine. Thank you so much for joining me, especially here on a Saturday morning. I know it's quite early. Obviously can't do the live stream tomorrow because I'll be away. So it's moved to this Saturday time slot. If you have got up to make the effort to come to the live stream, thank you so much. I'm really keen to see what questions you've got based on the discussion today. I hope everyone's had a good week. It's been a massive week for the ASX. We've seen all kinds of stocks across all kinds of industries having a really massive surge. We spoke about a few of them during the week through a couple of videos and on Wednesday's live stream. Yeah, we saw everyone getting pretty excited about a lot of stocks they've held for a long time and not seen much return on, really paying dividends this week. So on the contrary to that, I have seen some articles being published about how big the bubble is at the moment and how risky it is for investors, considering we're at an all-time high Schiller PE or close to it. It's approaching that tech bubble peak. And we've seen experienced investors saying it's a matter of time until the bubble bursts, and that it reminds them a lot of the tech bubble. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword here. Yes, we're seeing great gains, but there should be caution by investors considering the current market conditions and the fact that we might be in an inflated environment. On the flip side, we've seen a massive stimulus package issued by Joe Biden, which is no doubt fueling this rise in stocks. As we know, when stimulus enters the market, stocks are one of the first things to really benefit and go up in value. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you think the market is at the moment, whether you think it's due to crash soon, or you think we've got a few months left of this great bull run. Personally, I think that stimulus has just come out. We've certainly got a few months left before we should be concerned about a bear market. A bear market will come, obviously, it always does, and it's just being well positioned at that time and then having enough cash to invest at the bottom. So today we've got a couple of stocks to run over at the start of the live stream. So I'll go through those first. We'll have a chat about that. And while I'm talking, please start asking your questions and I will get to those. King Korean, thanks for joining us. The earliest you've woken up on a Saturday. Yes, mate, I'm not far behind you, so don't stress about that. Again, really appreciate you joining the show. Thanks very much. Pat, morning Pat, 11 a.m. in New Zealand. That's a little bit more comfortable for a Saturday morning. Thanks for joining as always. Really appreciate your comments. They always add value to the live stream, so thanks for that. Max, I see your comment there. Let me get to that soon. I'll run through some of the research I've done for this live stream based on some of the stocks that people were asking about on Wednesday. So let me jump straight into that, and then we'll start fielding some questions. I'll share my screen. Give me a moment. Let's have a look. Awesome. Cool. All right, I'll jump into this. We'll go through that and then, let's get straight into it. So, first company is Plug Power. So Plug being a US company traded on the NASDAQ, something a little bit different. And as I've mentioned, I'd love to go over a few more US companies. So if you have any suggestions, by all means, let me know, and I'll touch on them in future episodes. Plug Power is probably a company that I will make a full video on. I'll just give you guys a high-level rundown of the company and sort of what they're doing and their prospects. So they're focused on green hydrogen production. We spoke about this last live stream, how hydrogen's a little bit of an underrated industry at the moment, in the sense that there's a lot of focus on battery technology and not so much focus on hydrogen just yet. However, when we look at Plug Power's stock price, you'll see that it certainly hasn't been ignored by investors. There's been some serious gains already for these guys. So their two plants that they currently operate are powered by hydro and wind. So it is true green hydrogen. We spoke a little bit last live stream about a project that we've got going in Gippsland in Victoria. It's a Japanese consortium, and AGL is part of that mix, and they're looking at using coal-fired power plants to create hydrogen, but they're still labeling it as green because they're storing those fossil fuels underground. So they're capturing and storing the fuel, and I think using fossil fuels is probably the most cost-effective way currently to make hydrogen. So they're seeing if that's financially viable, and whether or not they can get some sales. We know Japan's certainly very interested in purchasing hydrogen from Australia, and Japan, being such a small country, simply doesn't have the natural resources to make it themselves. So they've come to Australia to invest, and Australia is welcoming Japan with open arms, especially given the current global situation with China. So we can see here for Plug Power, their 2024 goals. They want to have 5 green hydrogen plants, and based on what I've read, when they say green, they mean proper green, where hydro or wind, excuse me, or solar. So we can see those plants scattered across the US. The US, similar to Australia, has the advantage of this massive landmass, a lot of access to wind and solar and these renewable energy sources. And they're also looking at European expansion. So go on to the next slide. So they're engaged in the development of hydrogen fuel cell systems that replace conventional batteries, and the Plug Power electrolyzer, which we know is the critical component in converting water into hydrogen. This is one of the products that they produce. So it's a really critical component, and that's one of the main components of hydrogen production that needs to reduce in cost to make it cost effective. So they're saying they have the demand, which is probably true, especially as more and more countries start to begin to produce hydrogen. So this is a little extract from their annual report, and just to note that their annual report is very different to that of Australian companies. Certainly not as flashy, there's not much graphic design, it is just really a wall of text, and still trying to find the best source to research US stocks. I find Market Index in Australia is a fantastic resource. It gives me everything I want in one place, access to the investor presentations, annual reports, tells me the ownership structure, gives me a brief overview of the financials. Yet to find something that's similar for US stocks. So if you do know of the best website where we can get all of that information from for US stocks, please let me know. Be really interested in checking that out. So I'll read this out. We're focused on proton exchange membrane, the PEM, fuel cell and fuel cell processing technologies, and fuel cell battery hybrid technologies. So a fuel cell is a electrochemical device that combines hydrogen and oxygen to produce electricity and heat without combustion. So that's what will be used in a hydrogen car or truck or boat. Hydrogen is derived from hydrocarbon fuels such as petroleum gas or natural gas, propane, methanol, ethanol, etc. Plug Power develops complete hydrogen generation, delivery, storage, and refueling solutions for customers. Currently, the company obtains the majority of its hydrogen by purchasing it from fuel suppliers for resale. So their current sort of market position is not necessarily producing hydrogen, it's just on selling it, which is interesting, but it makes sense given how difficult it is currently to produce hydrogen. So, and then they list their current products and services, which I think is really interesting. This is their core mix of products. There's nothing really outside of this. So they've got a fuel cell. Gen Fuel is their generation, storage, and dispensing system. Gen Care is their Internet of Things maintenance system. Gen Sure is their stationary fuel cell solution. providing grid backup. GenKey is a turnkey solution for an aftermarket service for offering to customers transitioning to fuel cell power. And ProGen is their fuel cell stack and engine technology. So presumably that can be harnessed by manufacturers. So they're really doing a lot of things, and that can be good and bad. If a company focuses on too many things, they can sort of not do well at one. See how this goes, and I will do, as I said, a more in-depth video on plug power in the future. And once I get all the information together and research it, I'll be able to give a sort of my position on how I feel the company is doing at the moment and where it's going in the future, and whether or not it'll be competitive. Core Lithium's next. I'll just see if we've got any more questions. Hi Dal, how you doing? Thanks for joining us. PLS, we'll get to that shortly. Rochak, I think I'm saying that right. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. King Korean, great video on LYC. Yeah, pretty good timing. Wish I'd had that out a little bit earlier, but yeah, I thought it was good just to go through that company in detail. So a similar company here we're going to talk about is Core Lithium. It was requested last live stream, so I've done again a little bit of a high level review of Core Lithium to see what they're all about and what their competitive advantages are. So they're an Australian exploration company focused on lithium, copper and other mineral deposits in South Australia and the Northern Territory, and their flagship project is the Finniss Lithium project, and we'll have a look at this in some detail. So this is what they're saying in their investor presentation. So they want to be at the front line, being a global lithium producer. The 2020 achievements, they've had some regulatory approvals, and I think this, we'll get to this in a moment, but being in the Northern Territory as opposed to Western Australia may have made it easier for Core Lithium to obtain the approvals they needed. They've had the first European offtake with Transamine, binding offtake with Yahua, might be Japanese by the looks of those arrows on screen, and a new offtake with Xinfeng, which sounds Chinese to me. So they've increased their production over 50%, and they've increased their resource base by 150%, and they've doubled their lithium mine's life to 7 years. Now that's not bad, but when we looked at Lynas last night, we saw that their mine life is 25 years. Now I know it's a different product they're selling, rare earths versus lithium, but 7 years is not a super long life, and you'd really be looking at the company to either expand that further or try and get some more assets under their belt in terms of mineral deposits. 7 years is not a lot for long-term planning, I think. And then the NT government backs the Finniss project with a loan, so that's really important. Get to that in a minute. Here's a really interesting table that they've got in their presentation. So they're talking about their main project, which is this Finniss project, and they're not yet ready to enter construction. And they're citing the issues they had in 2020 and the general economy as a result, and that the lithium sector is recovering. It'd be good to see what the spot price on lithium is, see how that's doing. Let's have a look. Lithium price chart. These things are always difficult to find. Gold, lithium. There's no clear information. Yeah, okay. So you can see the price has just been going down since sort of 2018. Lithium carbonate, battery grade, starting to tail up, but it's not where it was. So that makes sense. Potentially they're waiting for this lithium carbonate price to come back up to 2018 levels. It'd would be to do with the project feasibility study and whether or not it's going to make money. And obviously, if they've got it on hold, which they're saying they do, that's because if it was completed tomorrow, it wouldn't be making money. So they need to be sure that that lithium price is enough to facilitate profitability. But here's a comparison they've done to a couple of other miners or companies. Piedmont Lithium we've spoken about in the past. There's a video on Piedmont on my channel if you want to check that out that goes into them in some detail. I encourage you to do that. And then Liontown Resources is one I've actually heard about just this week. A lot smaller, and they're sort of prospecting still. So it gives you a comparison about their projects. This must be their processing and exporting projects. So Finniss is the only one that's approved. Finniss is the one of two with a binding offtake, which I think means there's a deal with someone. They've got reserves, Piedmont doesn't. The mining style, I'm not super, I don't know what the advantages and disadvantages are, but they're open pit and underground. Piedmont's open pit only. Distance to port, pardon me, distance to port, a really key metric. How quickly or easily can you get your material to a port? We know the big miners, Rio Tinto, BHP, build their own railways, and that takes a lot of investment. You may not have to if you're only 88 k's from the port, or if you do, it's only going to be a short distance to cover. Liontown's 700 k's. That's a huge distance. So that's a major disadvantage. Piedmont's about half that, so not as bad, but this is a great figure, but it's got a massive caveat, and I'll get to that soon. Market cap, yeah, so these guys are small. Probably a good time to get in if you're confident in the company. But let's have a look at this second slide, or this next slide. This is the one that I think is the most interesting thing about Core Lithium. So we can see their lithium project here, very close to the port of Darwin. We can see 25 k's from Australia's closest port to Asia. Sounds good. Relatively high grade lithium being produced. And yeah, I guess that's essentially it for this slide. They are producing at the moment, which is also good. They're not just prospecting. But here's the killer. Have a look at this. Some of you may know, some of you may not know, but the port of Darwin, which they're saying is so good because they're really close to it, Port of Darwin's actually controlled by the Chinese. For some reason, the Northern Territory government, as said here in this ABC article, the NT government made a silly decision that risked the freedom and strategic security of Australians over the next 100 years. So China has a 99-year lease on the Port of Darwin, which means they're in control. So that is a huge problem, in my opinion, for Core Lithium. If they do become a major lithium producer, which competes with some of the miners and producers in China, well, the Chinese government can just shut the port. And we know they said that they're only 88 kilometers from the Port of Darwin, but what's their next nearest port? What's their backup strategy? I'd be really reluctant to rely on exporting out of a Chinese port. We know there's heaps of coal ships waiting outside China at the moment, full of Australian coking coal. They just can't unload because there's a secret ban going on. We know they've threatened all kinds of embargoes on other exports. Seems like a huge risk to me. And if I do a video on Core Lithium, I will have a look at in their investor presentations, annual reports, they normally list the company's key risks. And if that's not top of the list of risks, then obviously the company's either not wanting to draw attention to it or doesn't realize the risk. That's my take. Be interesting to hear what you think. Pat, might need to check what the lithium price projections are for the next decade. Probably similar to graphite, yeah. But the key is that you need the high commodity price in order to facilitate investment in infrastructure. So we see when the iron ore price, for example, at the moment is at a really high level, almost all-time highs, not quite. You see all these mines popping up in Western Australia because all of a sudden they become economically viable to produce, and people are willing to lend money, and investors are more keen to invest because the returns look to be acceptable. So if there's any more comments just on this port situation, have a look. Nothing yet. I would like to hear your thoughts on that analysis because I think that's a super interesting one. Talk about the last company that I've done some research on, which is Novonix. There was some massive hype around Novonix earlier in the year, around that Tesla battery day, and there were some questions last week or on Wednesday about what are your thoughts on Novonix at the moment, and I wasn't up to date with the news. Now I am. They've appointed Jeff Dahn as Chief Scientific Advisor, and he works hand in hand with Tesla. So they put out a release on that, which I'll go to if I can find it. Yep, so here's their press release talking about effective July 2021, so not quite yet. In 6 months, he will provide advice across its battery and materials research business. Now we know that Novonix is in Tennessee with their processing facility, and these guys at this university, they've got Tesla researchers and Novonix researchers, and it looks like they're kind of combining forces at the moment. And he is key to producing these new technologies which will enable, I guess, better processing of graphite to allow for longer range batteries, and that's something that Tesla and Novonix are really interested in. And Novonix is situated in, as I said, this development plant is in Tennessee and it's Central America, and it allows them to provide to the American car makers once they get their graphite production up and going. And it's in Chattanooga. Forgive me on that. Yeah, ramping up capacity to 2,000 tons a year of synthetic graphite, supplying to Samsung, and they're the only US supplier for tier 1 EV products. And they've also got an agreement with Sanyo, who we know makes high quality lithium batteries. So it's looking pretty good for Novonix at the moment. The other points I had was that they've got a hold on their Australian mining operations. So this lithium that they're processing, I'm not exactly sure who their main supplier is of the lithium. However, we do know that in their annual report, which I've got here, they look at their Mount Dromedary project, which I believe is in Western Australia. It's got high grade graphite, but it's on hold. So medium term oversupply conditions, again, that's to do with the price of the commodity. More favorable investment opportunities, which is their manufacturing plant in Tennessee. So they've got it there, not being developed yet. And obviously that's because there's a bit of an oversupply, as they've stated. So that's interesting. It's a good asset for them to have. And then Novonix commenced commercial scale processing in June 2020 in Tennessee, and it will continue to ramp up that processing to 2,000 TPA by the end of 2021. And we also know that this facility was awarded $5 million US from the US Department of Energy. So they put out an announcement on that as well. And this Pure Graphite is one of their subsidiaries, which is running this operation in Tennessee. So massive grant from the US government. And what this allows them to do is to continue development of this processing facility. It's a new furnace technology. If you want to read it, you can. It's on their announcements. But overall, similar to what we saw with Linus, the US government's investing in Novonix, and that's positive. It indicates that they're probably a leader in their field. And again, the US is looking for alternatives to Chinese supply. So if you want another video on Novonix, I'd be happy to make that. Just let me know. It's probably time to go over some questions. So let's find out where I was. Go all the way back up to the top. Let's have a look. Max. Hope you're still with us, Max. Any thoughts on TTCF? Let's have a look. Haven't heard of them. TTCF. Cool. US stock. Tattooed Chef. Interesting. Make a note of that. TTCF. So what do they do? This is the issue with these US stocks. I've got no idea which website's the one to look at. So the Tattooed Chef. So it looks like food, plant-based foods. Is it delivery? Might have to come back on this one. Good suggestion though. If we have a look at their price movement. Yeah, not too bad. Sort of been a bit up and down, a bit flat line for the past. Well, they've only been going for 2020, it looks like. Cool. Yeah, all right, one I'll have a look at. Thanks for mentioning that. Let's see what else we've got. Dow, thanks for joining us, guys. PLS. Sure, let's have a look. PLS, Pilbara. Yep. Lithium mining. Okay, so interesting. We didn't see Pilbara on that competitors list we put up before for Core Lithium. They haven't listed Pilbara. Pilbara, I think I actually invested in them about 3 or 4 years ago, unsuccessfully. As you can see, yeah, I probably got in here or something and then it went down. So yeah, they've been going down for years and now ramping up again as EVs become the next hot thing, because we know countries are putting bans or future bans on petrol and diesel cars, so it makes sense. They're coming down a bit. So they've got a lithium project in Port Hedland, so in the Pilbara, and it's currently developing it. So it doesn't sound like they're in production yet. Perhaps that's why they don't make this list. Because yeah, they're just not producing. One to look at, and if I do a video on Core Lithium, if you'd like me to do that, let me know. Then I'll definitely include Pilbara as a comparison. Thanks for that. That's a good note. Saw that comment, King Korean. Thanks for that. Wish there was a pullback so I can top up on them again. I think you're referring to Linus. I think we all think. Yeah, look, there will be a pullback because we've seen their price movement has just been ballistic in the past few days. I mean, have a look at it. Year to date, 1 year, yeah. That vertical price movement, you can always expect a correction after that. It's really unnatural movement. This sort of slow grind up is, yeah, usual, unless you're Tesla, of course. And their vertical line up just doesn't seem to end, as you can see. But I still think this is probably overvalued. They are just a car manufacturer, so might be worth a video as well on Tesla. Pat, if an Aussie company could make hydrogen from biomass, it would be a good way to sort Australia's recycling issues. Yeah, yeah, you're right. The Hazer process, it's a stock we looked at. I'll bring them up. Hazer's a stock we looked at last live stream, and they're an Australian lithium producer. Whether or not hydrogen producer. Whether or not they're making anything at the moment, I'm not sure. I do plan on doing a video into Hazer Group, and I do know that they're not using fossil fuels. They're not using wind. They're not using solar. Someone mentioned they're using like iron ore to make hydrogen, and I'm not sure how that works, Pat. You have to let me research that one. But yeah, biomass, maybe. Depends on like the energy output. We know that hydrogen takes a huge amount of energy to produce, so it needs to be a really reactive process. I'm not sure if biomass is a viable way of doing it. If it is, then yeah, it would certainly be a good solution. Let me look into that. I'll come back to you, and certainly when I do the video on Hazer Group, I'll go over all the, I guess, the current methods that people are using to produce hydrogen. We saw with Plug that we talked about earlier, they're using like natural gas. So that's what it said anyway. It said wind, solar, but then in their annual report, it mentioned natural gas, which is not dissimilar to what AGL's doing with coal. I know it's a different fossil fuel, but they are fossil fuels. So I've got to get my head around that, and when I do, I'll be sure to make a video and let you guys know. Would you happen to know any companies that mine copper and nickel in a more sustainable and ethical manner? I know Musk wants nickel to be mined in a sustainable way. I think the nickel mining process is pretty toxic from what I've read. I think Rio Tinto produces quite a lot of nickel and copper. The big miners, there's probably some specialists out there as well. No, I'm not sure. Probably my first point of call would to be go and look at one of the ethical ETFs and see if they've got any miners that they've invested in, is to be part of the ethical ETF investment list. Someone else has done the research to ensure that, you know, they're an ethical company. So I'll make a note of that, King Korean, and that might be one to have a look at. So that's ethical or sustainable. Nickel and copper, was it? Yeah. I'll put it on the list, and maybe that's one we'll have a look at next live stream for sure. Devinder, thoughts on Vulcan? Yeah, so I think 2 live streams ago we went over Vulcan, and I wish I'd made a video on it because, yeah, we've seen what's happened to the Vulcan share price. Let me see if I can pull up some notes from that live stream. See what we've got. Might have been live stream 3. Polynovo Vulcan. Yeah. So here were my notes from that other live stream. You can go back and watch the full one. That was live stream 3. So yeah, please go and check that out afterwards if you want the full rundown, because I think I did go over some of their presentation slides and get into a bit of detail with Vulcan. But yes, essentially the price went up so much is because they had a really positive feasibility study, and it showed that their asset that they've got in, I believe it's Upper Rhine Valley of Germany, is not only good for supply of lithium, but it's also good for generating energy. So Vulcan's key idea is that they not only want to be a lithium producer, and they want to be an energy producer. So like an AGL or Origin Energy or equivalent in Europe. And the idea is that the energy they use to create lithium is offset by the energy they produce for the grid. And their source of energy, I think, is geothermal, which is really cool. So it's a sustainable energy, from heat from the ground. So awesome idea. And the feasibility study has shown that it will be profitable. The net present value, as you can see there, of 3 billion, which is huge. And we saw a corresponding jump in the share price. So that's a little bit about Vulcan, but yeah, go and check out that live stream number 3 if you want to see a full rundown on Vulcan. And if you think it's worth its own dedicated video, let me know and I'll do that. Pat, might need to check what lithium price projections. Yep, so we had a chat about that. King Korean, did you see the Palantir rise 25 today? No, I didn't. Tech company in the US, another video. Yeah, 100%. Let me just note that down. Palantir and Snowflake. We'll just have a quick look at Palantir and see what they're all about. Palantir. Okay, sort of been going for the last year. American software company, big data analytics. Yep. All right, sure. I'll that's listed, and I'll check that out maybe for next live stream, because I'm really interested in checking out these US growth stocks as well as the Aussie ones. So cheers, Pat. Cheers, King Korean. Sorry, Pat. Strategically, I'm surprised the government did jump on the sale of Port Darwin. Yeah, I know. It's incredible. Must have been a good bit of money involved, but we know this is a strategy China's been using across Southeast Asia, Africa, and it's the Belt and Road. Even Dan Andrews is on the he's on the list as well. So essentially they come in and say, if you lease us this asset, we'll put money into developing it, or we'll build you a new bridge or whatever. And it's all about getting strategic control. Not that that's their policy, but in essence, it's about getting strategic control of a lot of different areas of the globe. And we saw another move by China not too long ago. I'll pull it up. And it was China fishing. Yeah. So, yeah, this one. So essentially, this is sea north of Darwin, Daru Island. Very, very good waters for fishing, and there's a lot of very successful Australian fishing trades off the north coast, and Papua New Guinea is the other country that has a share in those waters. And at the moment, the amount of boats that Papua New Guinea has is nowhere near the quota that they're allowed. So the Australian fishermen are sort of pushing their quota, and they're doing really well, but it's sustainable because both sides aren't maxing out the amount of boats they can have in the water. But now China's bought these rights. They've come in and done a deal with Papua New Guinea, and they're setting up a fishing port. Yeah, just a couple of 100 k's north of Darwin. How good's that? So yeah, that's another one to watch out for. Ben, did you say Kerrisdale Capital Investment Firm took out a big short on Plug? Oh, okay. Yeah, well, that's one to consider for the video. Thanks, Ben. That's some good info right there. Plug being shorted. Be good to see their short sale percentage as well. Just make a note of that. Yeah, well, it is, with hydrogen, there's a lot of speculation, obviously. No one's really making a lot of money off it at the moment because the demand's just not there. So these stocks that are rising very quickly have the ability to come down very quickly because there's nothing material in terms of financial results holding up their stock price. Did they take out a short or just say the price was valued? Yeah, well, it's something I'll have to have a look at. Interesting to hear your thoughts on the ARK ETFs. Are ARKs the ethical ones? Have a look. Innovation. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep. Put it on the list. I wonder what they've got. Innovation ETF. And they normally list their holdings. Yep. Oh, yeah. So worldwide. Pretty cool. Tesla, Roku. Roku makes those TV set-top boxes, I think. Never heard of these guys. Never heard of Square Inc. Never heard of them. Never heard of them. Never heard of them. Spotify, we all know. Baidu, we know. Okay. Some cool, especially some of these in the top 10 that I haven't heard of might be worth a bit of an investigation for sure. Tencent, we know. PayPal. Zoom, innovation, cool. Yeah, all right, that's a good good suggestion. Nintendo, awesome. Thanks for that one. Pat, my other question with hydrogen would be if they use similar components to batteries. the fuel cells. Yeah, my understanding is that the hydrogen is, well, not burnt, but it goes through combustion. And when you combust hydrogen, you just get water, I'm pretty sure. Hydrogen combustion. Fuel and air. Just make sure I'm not wrong on that one. There you go, hydrogen aeroplane, pretty cool. Should say, here we go, so yeah, all right, we've all seen that before. Does it say that? No, it doesn't say anything. Hydrogen combustion emissions. What is the product? The only byproduct is water. Yep, as I thought. So yeah, I think they do work by burning it, and it just produces water, which is why it's so good. And from that previous article, we can see it can be used for for a jet aircraft, which is what electric batteries can't be used for because they're too heavy at the moment. Anyway, ASX Analytics, how you doing, mate? Any building related stocks that catch your fancy, especially as government will continue? Yep, there sure are. Adelaide Brighton has for a long time been a powerhouse. If we look at their max timeline, we can see this beautiful growth they've had, since, well, really from 2000, but say you got in after the GFC, fantastic, $2 up to $6, nice and steady, decent dividend. And now it's crashed. And it crashed because of this inactivity we've had since 2018 in the building sector. But now is the time they may come back into force. Who knows? And then Adbri, for those who don't know, they produce all kinds of concrete components, so cement, aggregate, lime, as it says here, but they also produce building materials, so cement blocks and those kinds of things. Boral, similar story. Boral produce all kinds of building products, primarily bricks, cement, concrete, for sure. Massive concrete plants all over the place. You can see they've really suffered that their price movement is nowhere near as good as Adbri's, and that's why Adbri would be my favorite if they can recover. We also know Brickworks as well, and Brickworks has a supplier of concrete blocks and bricks, so very similar. But Brickworks, I'm pretty sure they've got an investment side of the business where they invest in land and developing, which makes them potentially a better case for investment. We can see they've recovered quite well from COVID. I believe they were involved in the Amazon deal, with Goodman Group. So here's Brickworks' website. Amazon pre-commits to a 20-year lease on their Oakdale West estate. So yes, Brickworks has property. They've got to deal with Amazon, so that's tempting for sure. In terms of builders, probably stay away. What have we got? Lendlease. Well, Lendlease is, yes, they have a building division, but they're primarily developers. Hasn't been doing that well. Mirvac has been okay, but Mirvac builds their own developments, and they normally develop residential property, low-rise residential. Hasn't done that well. I think materials suppliers are good. I've got an investment in James Hardie, and they've been a terrific company. I got in at James Hardie at $18. It's just been fantastic. Look at that price growth. And James Hardie's so great because they provide a lot of materials to the US market, and they're heavily invested in the US market. They're a well-known brand in the US. They're a well-known brand here. They make all kinds of products, but particularly building cladding. They used to mine and produce asbestos products, and so you'll note that every year they pay a couple of $1 million out of their profits to a compensation fund for people who have been affected by asbestos, and that will be ongoing for years and years. But despite that payment they have to make every year, they're still highly profitable. Good company. It's done me very well. So that's sort of my wrap on construction companies. King Korean, my research for nickel says Vale, big Brazilian companies. Yeah, Vale, I think, is an iron ore producer. Appears to be putting money in R&D. Musk advice he would give contract to non-toxic mining. Cool. ASX Analytics, looking for companies to benefit from the infrastructure stimulus. Yep, for US, I'm interested in Caterpillar. Yeah, definitely. The only thing I'd say with Caterpillar is, they produce heavy machinery. Once you buy a Caterpillar product, you don't really need one, or you shouldn't need one for another 20 years. Whereas a material supplier really benefits from the growth because it's an instant reaction. There might be companies sitting around that have had a Caterpillar for 10 years doing not much, and if there's a boom, they'll just pull that machine out. But yeah, it could be a good one. I want to diversify my sectors into trends that I believe will rise in the future: cybersecurity, esports, renewables, AI, and robotics. Surprised no one's been speaking about PointsBet. I'm super bullish on PointsBet, and I'm regretting now that I didn't get in a couple of weeks ago. Essentially, what's happened, I think they're still probably good value, not too late, but they're going to release their results soon in February. But we've seen results from their main competitors, their US bookmaker competitors, and we've seen some enormous gains in market share, revenue. Essentially, they're doubling. All the other guys are doubling their revenue, and I think if PointsBet comes out and says, hey, we've also doubled our revenue, take a look at their stock being $20, I reckon. Of course, do your own research. This is not financial advice. And of course, consult a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decisions. But personally, I'm a bit annoyed that I didn't catch PointsBet at $12 or $13, but I'm really considering maybe jumping in just before their announcement, because it's very unlikely it's going to be a negative announcement. I think they're doing really well. They've just got a new license for another US state. They know what they're doing. Lots of geopolitical tensions with China, South China Sea. US and its allies are focusing on it. Navy shipbuilder, yeah. Yeah, is that Austal, presumably by the name? They're an Australian shipbuilder. Not sure if you're aware, but we are building some new submarines in Adelaide at the moment, and we can't, it's not an Australian submarine. We can't do that. We're not experienced enough. So I think they're building a French submarine, and the parties to the tender were, I think, Japan for a Japanese sub, France, and the US maybe. And essentially the deal is they provide the plans and the information and help set up a manufacturing facility in Adelaide to get local jobs. And yeah, it's a complicated process, and we don't have the know-how. The US makes the best subs, Virginia class subs. Yeah, be looking at US military supply companies, I think, as opposed to Australian. But each their own. Pat, CRISPR, genetic modification tool, reprogram genetic code. Yeah, cool. Is that for like foods or animals? Hydrogen fuel cells in vehicles don't burn. Okay, yeah, chemical. Yeah, makes sense. Robert, Port of Darwin is commercially controlled by Chinese government, 100%. However, NT or federal government can always take back control. Can they? I'm not sure. Not a legal expert on the Port of Darwin contract, but normally these leases are binding. We certainly saw the UK had a 99-year lease on Hong Kong, and up until that lease expired, there was nothing China could do to take control of Hong Kong. So we'll see. So Pat, Kinkorian, Parker and Hannafin would be a good US company that would probably benefit. Also 3M, Becton. Yeah, 3M, awesome company. You see so many of their products in everyday life. Everything uses 3M adhesive. It's incredible. Probably continue to rise for med products. Yeah. All right, might make a list of some of these. So Parker and Hannafin. One moment, guys. Thank you. Yeah, Becton and Dixon probably continue to rise because of COVID demand for med products. So yeah, 3M definitely. We've got a pretty good, I guess, medical supply company in Australia, Ansell. You know, they make rubber gloves, they make condoms, they make all kinds of different, pretty, I guess, not easy to make plastic products. They're quite a specialized company, and they held pretty steady through COVID, a bit in the dip, and now they're down a little bit. Could be a good opportunity. Yeah, protective and industrial medical gloves. Oh, there you go. Sold its condom manufacturing business in 2017. There you go. So no longer. Maybe that's why their share price went down. Who knows? Robert Lee, sovereign risk news. But if Oz-China relations get to that stage, it won't matter that much. Yeah, maybe. There is the, international court of law, and if it's depending on, who the governing body is for that legislation and that lease, you can't break it. It's pretty, unless you go out and declare war on each other. These things can be legally binding lease contracts between countries. I think it's the International Court of Arbitration who will settle things like that. So yeah. Thanks ASX Analytics. Cheers for joining us. James Hardy. Yeah, good company. Just check that they're not overvalued, I guess. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers. Robert Lee, Boral. Yeah. But as we saw, price movement, not that good compared to Adelaide Brighton or Brickworks. So, yeah, Brickworks, that's it. You got it. King Korean. I'm in DraftKings, US betting company. Yeah, that was one of those competitors that has reported their results. And maybe that's a good one. PointsBet update plus, DraftKings overview. Put that down as an idea. Yeah, so DraftKings came out. See if I can find it. DraftKings results. Financial results for the third quarter. Yeah, 98% increase. How crazy is that? So if PointsBet release the same numbers, then you can bet that price is going up. So King Korean. Thanks, Pat. Definitely look into those companies. I like 3M, want to get more blue chip companies. Yeah, cool. So guys, that looks like it might be the end of the questions. It's been a great live stream, gone for a whole hour. I didn't think we would at this time slot, but thanks for getting out of bed and joining me. Really appreciate the support as always. Thanks for all the questions. I've got a good list of companies to go over in the next live stream. Just one more from Robert. Borrow gives US. Yeah, true. That's a good point. But so does James Hardy on that account. And one more, King Korean. ARCG is the ETF for genomics sector. Kathy Woods believes the genomics sector will boom. Yeah. Fintechs, robotics. Yeah, so their ETFs would probably be a good guide to look for what companies that might be worth investing in if you want to invest in individuals. Otherwise, ETFs are always a good option. So, all right, guys, I might wrap this one up. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next live stream. I think the next one we'll do probably Wednesday, 8 o'clock So join me for that one. It'll be good to see you all there. Thanks again for all the great questions. I've had a really good time, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks very much.